This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening. I'm Sabrina Brown. Thank you for joining us. Topping the news tonight, Resorts World Bimini unveiling the first phase of its new seaport today. As a result of the new infrastructure, passengers will now begin disembarking directly onto the island. Sea passengers can now spend up to 6 hours on the island of Bimini, and the superfast ferry that currently offers service from the Port of Miami will now begin sailing from Port Everglades in mid-October. Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie, Tourism Minister and MP for Bimini the Honorable Obi Wilshcombe, and other government executives taking part in the ceremony. We will have further details later in this newscast. Despite the passing of the gaming bill in the House of Assembly, members of the Grand Bahama Christian Council say their position has not changed when it comes to gambling. Tonight, Christian leaders stand united, warning Bahamians of the implications of gambling. Shashina Roll reports.
A study carried out by members of Gamblers Anonymous in the United States. He says he hopes gambling does not have the same effect here in the Bahamas.
When the members of Gambling Anonymous were surveyed, 26% said they had divorced or separated because of gambling. 34% had lost or quit a job because of gambling. 44% had stolen from work because of gambling. 21% had filed for bankruptcy because of gambling. 18% had gambling-related arrest. 66% had contemplated suicide. And 16% had attempted suicide.
The government contends that the industry has to be regulated for a number of reasons, stating that the central bank has expressed concern about this unregulated growing industry in the Bahamas. The council president, Reverend Peter Pinder, says the government and the church are looking at this issue from two different angles.
I understand completely. I have no ill will or ill feelings against anyone in the government for taking the stand that they feel they need to take. That's where they are. But that does not mean that I must support it.
Pastor Cedric Beckel says what is perhaps most troubling is the fact that the government ignored the voice of the people who voted no to gambling.
They should have explained to us the central bank's position before they just, in a nonchalant, unconcerned, disregarding way, make the decision to move forward.
Pastor Robert Lockhart and Rita Stewart say Bahamians must stay away from this vice, even when it becomes legal.
Some things that we're allowed to do are not constructive, and I think gambling, even though it's being expanded in the Bahamas, and we may be allowed to do it, it's still not constructive. And I think in the long run, and I think history is going to bear this out, it's not going to be to our advantage.
In Philippians chapter 4 and 19, it says, God will supply our every need. So now we're taking our needs to chances. When our luck runs out, then what?
Now, these pastors say they will remain steadfast in prayer so that gambling does not affect the quality of life for persons living in the Bahamas. Shashina Roll, ZNS Network News.
Police hauling 4 suspects before the magistrate's court today on charges of armed robbery, housebreaking, and stealing. 25-year-old Wesley Munnings of Malibu Reef was charged before Magistrate Debbie Ferguson on 1 count of armed robbery. He was not required to enter a plea. He is accused of robbing a couple on Riddell Avenue earlier this week. He was remanded to Her Majesty's prison until November 12th, when a preliminary inquiry will commence. 27-year-old Christopher Ferguson of Luna Boulevard was arraigned before Magistrate Charlton Smith. He pled guilty to 2 counts of housebreaking and stealing, 1 count of stealing from a vehicle, 1 count of burglary and stealing. All charges relate to incidents reported to police in early September in the Bahama Terrace and Caraval Beach area. Ferguson was sentenced to 24 months at Her Majesty's prison in New Providence. 18-year-old Marcus Dickinson of Caraval Beach and a 16-year-old juvenile were both arraigned before Magistrate Charlton Smith on 1 count of stealing from a dwelling house. They both pled guilty to the charge. Marcus Dickinson was sentenced to 6 months in jail, and the juvenile was sentenced to 6 months at the Simpson Penn School for Boys in New Providence. These incidents, according to police, occurred in Caravel Beach on September 4th. Bahamians now have the opportunity to get a better understanding of the proposed amendments to the Constitution and give their input, as the government has decided to postpone the November 6th referendum. Tonight, the leader of the local Christian community is responding to that decision. The proposed changes to the Constitution includes 4 bills surrounding citizenship, which seeks to level the playing field between men and women. Bill number 4, which will end discrimination based on sex, sparked widespread controversy, which led to changes in the wording of that bill. Many have called for a delay in the referendum, and now that it has been pushed back, President of the Grand Bahama Christian Council, Reverend Peter Pinder, says he understands why.
I do not believe that it is as simple as some people have made it out to be. Some people say, oh, we're only dealing with gender equality. But I think the proposed constitutional amendments go far beyond gender equality.
The leader of the Christian community says he believes the proposed amendments to citizenship strikes at the core of the Bahamian male psyche.
For example, we have come out of a period where we were controlled and dominated by the slave master. Following that, we were dominated by the white man. And in some quarters, Bahamian men are dominated by the strong Bahamian woman. And so therefore, they don't want the foreign man to come in and dominate them.
Reverend Pinder is also of the view that there are other logical reasons why the government was forced to postpone the referendum.
I believe that one of the reasons why people are calling for it to be delayed is because they recognize that the more it's delayed, the more talk there is. And the more talk there is, the more that comes out. Some of the things that I am now thinking about in relation to the bill, I didn't think about it before.
A new date for the constitutional referendum has not been announced. Stay with us. There's more news after this.